This is Dr. Michele Fiala of Ohio University. I'm here to teach the 2024 to 2025 OMEA All-State Etudes. The slow one is in E-flat minor by Heinze on page 53 of the Voxman Selected Studies. You'll want to choose your tempo based on the tempo of the 30-second notes. If you look at the end of measure, at the end of line 4 to the beginning of line 5, think through the tempo where you know you can play that beautifully and lyrically. And whatever that tempo is the tempo you take at the beginning. So you can think through that even before you do your recordings, really process that tempo. For me, it's around 30 for the dotted quarter note, 90 for the eighth note. I encourage you to practice with the dotted quarter note beat where you have to keep track of the beats in between. It'll help your rhythmic stability, and it'll also help diagnose any places where you might be doubling or half timing the tempo or changing the meter. At the beginning, you'll want to make sure you have your response on your low E flat. So you want to keep your corners forward. You can buzz or whistle. You'll want to make sure your reed is halfway out on the fleshy part of your lip. You're rolling in lip and reed together. Your finger, you're sensing right in the center of this ring right here. And so it doesn't take a lot of pressure. It just takes your fingers in exactly the right spot. And you'll want to practice until you can get that several times in a row before you know that you're confident starting on the low E flat. The next spot that you might have a little trouble with is this B flat to high D flat between measures 4 and 5. So the high D flat fingering is 2, 3, 1, and the low C key. And you'll really want to imagine blowing air through those notes, even if there's a tongue. So you can start out slurring them to practice. And then add a lu, the lightest possible tongue. So it becomes. Then you have a trill coming up at the end of line 1. The trill for E flat to F is you still have your octave key on and your half hole covered, and you're trilling this middle finger here. And then when you go to the F at the end of the line, it's a longer held F, so you'll want to use your left F. That's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and this key. Just like the regular F, like this, except using the left key will give you the best possible intonation and tone color. Forked Fs we want to use as the last possible resort when things are really fast and you can't hear the tone color and pitch differences. So if I play the end of that line, you see that I use the forked F in the trill, but when I'm going to a longer F, I'm using the left F, so I have the best tone color and intonation. The next place is a B flat to C flat trill at the end of system 2. That fingering is you finger a B flat and you add your A flat key and you wiggle this finger here. Then there are some other left E flats when you have D flats next to E flat. Like for instance, in system 4, the second measure, you've got, and because you play the E flat before the D flat, you might mark a little L on there to remind yourself to use the left E flat key so you can get to your D flat. There are quite a few places that you might want to go through and mark in this. Then there are some more trills after the measure of rest. This was pretty well divided breathing wise because you've got some rests and some things. But generally, if you want to take a breath before then, if you're looking in the passage that we mentioned earlier, the in that passage, If you need a breath in there, take it after one of the longer notes and before the faster notes. Generally, it's best to breathe after you arrive on the downbeat because that's usually a resolution of what's happened before. And even if you need to break a slur, I would try to avoid breathing on the bar line, of course, because music tends to carry over the bar line, except in Brahms. For some reason, he has some phrases that end on the bar line. Then when you have the descending trills down later after the high F, you've got this D fingering to high F fingering, thumb octave, half hole 2, A flat and E flat keys together, 2 and 3. And then you've got this A flat to B flat trill to G, G flat to A flat trill. You just hold this finger down on your A flat key and wiggle this finger. And then you've got F, and then you've got that E flat trill. So that passage. And you could either breathe before these pickups there, or you could slow down and actually in that case breathe on the bar line to surprise your audience. Either of those would be an interesting way to do things. So either breathe after the low D, slow down a little into the low D, and then get back to tempo on the repeated B flats, or slow down for the repeated B flats, take a breath, and then start again in tempo on the low E flat there. So in general, you'll want to create a breathing plan. Sometimes you'll need an exhale, sometimes you'll need an inhale. And looking ahead, 4 lines from the bottom, I would breathe before those repeated the B flats there. But if I start where I left off, I'll show you the next couple of spots where I breathe. And then as you go into the arpeggi, you can hopefully make it to the E flat that's after the E flat to D. So if you can get through this measure. Breathe there before you keep going. And then toward the end, same thing with the D to E flat. The E flat's always a resolution. So hopefully that'll give you enough breathing spots. And if not, you can listen for a spot after the downbeat, after a note that seems resolved in the phrase. And then just make sure that you're really doing all the vivid dynamic contrast in this. Good luck on your audition, and please join me for my next video about the fast etude, which is a fairling that's also in this Voxman Selected Studies book.